We are live now and just want to welcome everyone to our latest in our video series, Advocates for All. And I am pleased today to be joined by Qadriyyah Johnson of St. John's Community Services. Welcome, Qadriyyah. Why don't you take a second and kind of let us all know kind of what you do with St. John's, how long you've been at St. John's, kind of what your kind of seat in the bus is and what your role is in terms of driving change and leading change across the organization.
Okay, hey everybody, I'm Qadriyyah. I work out of the DC office doing quality assurance and quality improvement. Basically what that means is making sure that we are following any guidelines, regulations that are given to us, but then also seeing ways that we can improve on how we provide services to the individuals that we support. Most of that is I like data. I do a lot of collecting and analyzing, looking at, numbers and just what we're really doing, and is what we're doing what we said we were going to do, and if not, how can we make sure that it happens?
Yeah, I think for people that may be new to intellectual and developmental disabilities and that work in supporting those individuals, there is a tremendous amount of compliance that goes into that. There's a lot of regulatory compliance and oversight, as you can imagine, just given some of the situations that the people we support have and their needs. And so your job is enormous, frankly, because you're making sure that we are delivering on what we say we're going to do, that we are absolutely delivering on our mission in providing the best support possible to those individuals that are in our care, and making sure that their unique needs and opportunities are being met, because it's all about kind of helping them live their best life, right? And so there's a compliance component to that as well.
Yes, accurate. I've been here at St. John's for a little over 2 years. June marked my 2-year anniversary, I think June 4th to be exact. So it's been very interesting as far as just the change we've seen in the 2 years that I've been here, and just seeing how we're growing and, excited about what's to come.
And you and I kind of started close to the same time. I think I started maybe 6 months prior to you. And then I think we met up really when we probably moved our offices, we started to interact more. I came from a background of homeless services. You got homeless services on our radar here in the District of Columbia. And because of you, we were able to find out about a unique opportunity that was there and a need that was there in this community here in DC. And we were successful in going through the process of vetting and getting the contract and being able to launch what we now call the Oasis Program. So I was hoping you could kind of touch on why that was so important to you and talk a little bit about the Oasis Program and how it's set up.
Okay, so for me, the opportunity was great. We work with homeless youth ages 18 to 24, which when you hear those age ranges, before I got into this line, I didn't know that was considered youth, but 18 to 24. And it was important to me because I actually had started a nonprofit, but never got around to launching it. And it was called There's More to Me Than This. And this was usually sexuality and how people kind of take that one part of your life and make it your primary characteristic and kind of throw out maybe all the other good things or things that they're proud of about you and kind of put that at the top. It trumps everything else. So when I heard about the opportunity to, not only help homeless youth, but because of the number of homeless youth in the district that identify as, LGBTQ, I thought that was very important because a lot of youth are put out of their homes because of their sexuality. Lots of reasons, but that is one. So it was very important to me to at least hope and try, to see if that was something that we could help and make a difference in.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, the data says that 40% of homeless youth in that category are identifying as LGBTQ or from that community. And they're also at a greater risk of sexual exploitation while they're out on the street. They're also at a greater risk of attempted suicide, just from a lack of affirmation and support. And so we're thrilled because the Oasis program, we named it as an Oasis, we want to create a space that's safe and affirming for all individuals to be able to come in that either were at risk of being homeless or were homeless, and be able to stabilize, catch their breath, and then get the supports they need to be able to start to get a plan and move forward with their life, and making it as best as possible. So we just launched this program in April, really, with our first participant. So COVID kind of paused it for a little while, but I just heard this week that we got matched with our second individual coming into the program, and I'm really excited that that's happening. So our goal is to get to 10 and see if we can grow beyond that. But I am thrilled that we are in this space here in DC, because I think it's so needed, and it's so life-saving, and it's so life-affirming for people. So that's tremendous. And you've, you know, so again, you don't provide the direct services, but you found a way to get to the table and get St. John's to the table to learn more. And you got involved with their data group, if I remember correctly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so they have a youth committee that is usually the last Thursday of every month. So I started attending those meetings. And from there, which it was awesome, they were like, oh, we're starting a new data and policy work group. And I was like, ooh, or data and performance measures. And I was like, oh, that's my thing. So I signed up. We have slowed down some because of COVID, but usually that meeting is on Tuesdays. I think it's the first or second Tuesday of every month. Where we just kind of discuss what's going on in the youth homeless system and how we can really drill down and identify specific measures, or just really give measurable objectives to what we're doing, so that we can know if we've hit success or not and have the data to back it up.
Yeah, and that's what we should be doing, is let data drive our decisions, and let data guide us, and make sure that we are actually helping people. You know, we were talking beforehand about our experience at St. John's, since we're both, you know, about 2 to 2.5 years in, and with June being Pride Month, and with the Black Lives Matter movement and the racial injustices that are around us, and just how that's becoming more and more apparent. At St. John's, we've been having these weekly conversations during our town hall, where we try to have dialogue, where we're trying to speak to some of the things, learn from what is happening, learn from other perspectives, learn how to be a better ally, both individually and as an organization. You were mentioning beforehand that you've been learning too about kind of having those types of conversations in the workplace. I was hoping you might be able to kind of speak to your experience.
Okay, so I used to be very opposed to having certain conversations in the workplace. Part of that was fear-based, because people say they won't discriminate or take any action against you because of who you are, but that's not always what you would see in practice at different organizations. I didn't experience that at St. John's, but anytime you go somewhere new, you don't really know what you're gonna run into. So I used to be very opposed, but as I started working here and built relationships with coworkers and different things, and especially once the Oasis project started driving off, we started doing that. I felt it was, you know, I felt safe and comfortable enough to start having conversations about several topics, one of them being, you know, sexuality and how I identify, because I knew that if we were gonna, one, do this project, it wouldn't just be me that needs to be aware, but as a group, we had to make sure that we were all, you know, on the same path of being inclusive and learning how to address people by their preferred pronouns, and just, you know, having greater cultural competency and adding that piece into it. So at St. John's, you know, it switched my perspective. Even for me to have this conversation is a big deal for me personally, but it's because I feel comfortable and I haven't experienced any type of discrimination or ill remarks or anything, just being who I am, which is how it should be everywhere you go, but it's just not always reality.
No, you're right. It is how it should be. It's how we are striving to be. Organizationally, we are on the front end of starting some sort of ally initiative where we can learn from each other and both look internally at where we might have inequities and we might need to do some work, as well as then how do we lend our voice externally, and what are the appropriate actions for us to take as an organization to really show solidarity. One of the ways that we've decided to show solidarity is by officially observing Juneteenth or June 19th tomorrow as a holiday for our organization. And that came about fairly quickly. A member of our leadership team raised that question, and then the LT quickly kind of all, had dialogue about it, and all unanimously were in support of it. And so I got the announcement out yesterday. I have to tell you, Qadriyyah, I've been overwhelmed and just humbled by the number of messages that I've received from our team members that are just sharing not just gratitude, but a sense of being seen, a sense of feeling actual support. You were one of them that reached out, and I was really thankful for that. What does that mean for you to see St. John's making this decision with Juneteenth?
Yeah, Juneteenth is so important, and I think that, like you said, people just don't always feel seen. They definitely don't feel heard, as you can see with the protests. They usually say protests are, people's way of making themselves be seen, often because they're not heard. So I was just impressed, actually, that, even though it was a quick decision that you made this a holiday for our company. I do feel like a lot of times people have to live their life in compartments where, they can't express or live their life how they feel that they should be able to because of their different maybe workplaces or family members. So for you to recognize and the leadership team to recognize and make this a holiday, I just think is just awesome and impressive. And I think in turn, it will drive more conversation amongst our company, coworkers, just because now it might make somebody feel just a little more comfortable because of, this one action.
I hope so. It was a learning moment for me. We all felt it was the right decision, but I think, again, hearing the responses so quickly, it really just in another way highlighted how important this movement is for racial justice and equality, and that we should be on the right side of that conversation, and that we should be trying to figure out how to further that movement to the extent that we can. And that's by learning and listening from those that have been living the struggle. And so that's been something that I have learned a great deal from in a short period of time through these dialogues that we're having. And I hope that we continue down this path and this commitment to it as well. Just in looking at kind of like, you live in DC, so, how are you feeling relative to the protests that they're literally probably a mile away from where you live, I think, because you're close to our office. So your thoughts on what's going on with Black Lives Matter and that movement and just the calls for racial justice and equality?
All right. So, I'm trying to think of a way to kind of summarize everything. Black Lives Matter is not new. And I just think that until people decrease their levels of ignorance, and ignorance is simply sometimes because you don't know anything better. Sometimes it's just you're making a choice to not change your viewpoints or how you treat people. But I think until we can decrease the fear that people have with, again, just being who they are day to day, living life and having conversations with people about, what's really going on. For me personally, I have not been to any of the protests for several reasons. One being big groups of people right now, but I do support them, and as long as, of course, they're peaceful. But I think, again, that I think generationally, younger generations like myself, I have close friends of all different races, and I see people younger than me, that is the case. But I think for some of the older generations, of course, because of what they experienced, that was not always the case. So again, I think the more we intertwine and have honest dialogue with people and make sure that we live what we write on paper, I think we'll see change when that occurs. But no laws are going to really drive the change. No oh, we're going to put cameras on people, you know, that's not going to change people's actions. It's really personal choice day to day to treat people how you want to be treated and respect them for who they are.
Well, that's a great point, because as much as laws are there after the fact, you know, to demonstrate that something bad happened, you're right. We should all be striving to make sure that things don't happen in the first place. And as communities and as individuals, we need to be taking responsibility we can to act accordingly and to help everyone feel that they are an equal part of our community that we live in. Yeah, that's absolutely imperative that we try to do that. You made that point when we were talking before about you've got friends that you've been in contact with over the years, and that's how you learn and grow, is through those conversations with each other, and by hearing and learning someone else's experience and informing your own experience because of that.
Yeah, and sometimes, you know, if, for example, if me and you have a conversation, you might only be getting my perspective, but it's better than having no perspective at all. And it may drive you to ask questions of someone else, again, because now you may feel more comfortable, or you may not have thought of something a certain way, but I said something that might have triggered you, or vice versa. You said something that caused me to kind of think a little differently. And then my belief is that once you do that and you spread it throughout your friend group, then we all have different friend groups, different family groups. The hope and what I feel is that, you know, we all reach out to people and eventually it spreads. And I think that's what will really drive true change in our communities and help with what's going on.
You're absolutely right. So just in the last couple of minutes of our time together, couple questions. First, you know, what motivates you? What motivates you to do the work? Because I've seen how you throw yourself into your work, and you do it with a big smile. You do it with a lot of energy and a lot of enthusiasm for the outcome. So I'm wondering what motivates you. And then the other thing I'm wondering is, how have you been coping, you know, through this different weird time that we've been in over the last 3 months?
Okay, so what motivates me, one is just, I have a certain way that I like to do things and operate. You know, I always say, if you hear something about me, I will hope that what you've seen and my patterns would, if it didn't sound right, you'd be like, wait, you know, that doesn't sound right. That's not usually how she does things. So just my personal standards, but also in the work that we do, because we work with vulnerable, populations, it's very important to me that we do all that we can to make sure that they receive the great quality supports that they're supposed to be receiving. So you really have to just get in there and talk about what's uncomfortable and what you're seeing. You can't always sugarcoat it. And sometimes, like I said, the data just speaks for itself. So that's really what drives me, is because a lot of them can't speak for themselves, and they might not even be aware that they're not being treated correctly or not receiving supports they're supposed to receive. It really motivates me to continue and make sure it's done right.
That's awesome. Yeah, we need you for sure driving that, because ultimately, if you aren't there, if others that fill that compliance role aren't there, then our standards could slip. And that means ultimately we're not fulfilling our mission if that happens. And the people that we are charged with and want to support aren't having the opportunity to live their best life, for sure. So, you know, how have you been dealing with kind of the last few months? Everybody, for the most part, that are in roles similar to yours or mine right now have been working remotely. You know, plus there's the fear of the virus. You know, all of that can create a lot of stress and anxiety. How are you doing in managing that? What have you been doing for self-care?
So time is usually limited for me. But, well, before this happened, time was very limited. So a lot of that self-care you always put on the back burner, because you're like, oh no, I got to finish this. I have to do this. I got to go to bed. Got to wake up early. So for me, I've had a lot of time to do those things like work out, grocery shop. I would never really grocery shop before. If anybody came to my place, you need to bring some snacks with you and food because I wouldn't have it. I did a lot of eating out. So I've done more cooking, which in turn has led to me being a little healthier, because if I order food out, I'm not ordering a salad. You know, I'm ordering something that's going to be tasty. So that's one thing. I picked up golf again. So when the range is open and the courts, I'm not in a place to go, in a place to play yet. So I do go to the driving range. So that's been good for me. I like to go like first thing in the morning. They open at 6:30 or 7. So that's been great. And then I walk to like the National Mall area and just get some exercise there. You still see some people, but it's like an open space. I've been watching a lot of Netflix and shows. I don't think I've watched as much TV in a long time, but that's been good too. So those are just a few things I've been doing.
Oh, that's awesome. No, I didn't know you were a golfer. That's really cool.
Yeah,
I think we're all.
I wouldn't call myself a golfer yet because I'm re-picking it up. So put me in like the very beginning category.
I'm right there with
no
you.
tee times yet. No
I'm right there with you. We'll have to get out sometime once things get back to normal. So,
yeah,
Qadriyyah, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much for all that you do to advocate for so many that need our voice. And so I'm so grateful to you for that and for helping us and keeping us on the straight and narrow with compliance and just the difference you're making by sharing your story and also the difference you're making in the lives of so many people. So thank you for taking the time.
Thank you, Alan.